Michael Gehlken, Morning News, live at the Combine, joins us now here on 105.3 The Fan. And a good afternoon, Michael. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How y'all doing?
We are doing outstanding. It's been a busy week at the Combine already with Steven talking so much. Is this event more about like a free agency and personnel preview than the draftable players for a lot of you writers at this point?
It is, and it might sound a little backward, but I might go the entire week without speaking to a single draft-eligible player. And that is not because the draft isn't important, but when you just look at where we are in terms of the time of year with free agency starting, March 13th is the negotiation period, March 15th is the end of the league year and start of the new one. There's just so much tied into that March 15th date that, and plus you have every agent, so many coaches, scouts, really the whole league is here. It's like this huge, big convention type conference. And so if you're not focused on networking and if you're not focused on free agency, you're missing out on a great opportunity to get a better sense of this team in the league.
What was it from Steven's comments today that really stood out to you?
I think that 3 is not a crowd at offensive tackle, where the Cowboys clearly have the successor in place at left tackle in Tyler Smith. That pick at number 24 overall has really paid dividends already in terms of what he did as a rookie, not only at left tackle but at left guard. Just a highly, highly impressive young player who gravitated to the veterans in his room, was really honest about his own development and worked through the lessons of Jason Peters, of Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith. You have Tyler Smith, and then you have Terrence Steele, who's having, by all measures, a remarkable recovery from his torn ACL that he suffered, as you remember, back in the Houston Texans game in December. And then with Tyron Smith going into, a contract year, and, questions of, the longest tenured active Cowboys player, what do you do with them? And the Cowboys, based on what Stephen Jones said, he expects Tyron Smith to be back. And so that's 3 starting caliber offensive tackles for the Cowboys at a time when so much of the league is really short on talent there. To have those 3 at your disposal is quite the luxury to have. Amid all the questions the Cowboys have on offense, tackle right now, not one of them.
Okay, now what about this franchise tag conversation? Maybe not using it on Pollard. We're trying to figure out who would be that next guy. I think we all consider Schultz to be that next guy most tag eligible. What say you?
Yeah, I would just be surprised if anyone but Tony Pollard gets the franchise tag. Stephen Jones is not going to say explicitly that they're going to tag Tony Pollard, and I think that's understandable because he hasn't met with Tony Pollard's agent yet. And ideally, you're not paying your running back, $10 million against your cap, but it gives the Cowboys a little bit of flexibility if that's the case. In terms of you tag them, you always have the opportunity to work on a multi-year contract, and if not, you take some time to evaluate during the 2023 season where Tony Pollard is at going into the 5th season of his career, coming off a major injury. So I would be shocked if the Cowboys do anything with the franchise tag, but exercise it on Tony Pollard. I believe that is what's going to happen. The way that when I speak to the Cowboys, just on a background type level, I just really get the impression that Tony Pollard is going to be in the building in 2023. There is not even the slightest indication that they're prepared to let him get away. And if that's the case, you place the franchise tag on him.
Michael, I believe you're going to have Mike McCarthy at the podium tomorrow. What's the first question that you want to ask him in order to get a better understanding of this team in the offseason?
Well, the number one question I have, and honestly I probably won't ask at the press conference because we'll be able to get him a little bit after he concludes there. So I do want to ask him about the coaching staff. Specifically, I think one of the most important and perhaps easy to overlook moves that the Cowboys made with their new staff is transferring Jeff Blasco from your assistant offensive line coach to now your running back coach. Not only are you just giving a guy, a coach that you believe in his own room, but you're giving another guy who's a former assistant offensive line coach his room in the run game. And so you have a tight ends coach, Lunda Wells, who was an assistant offensive line coach in this league. Blasco, a former assistant offensive line coach in this league. And when you combine those two with Mike Solari, your offensive line coach, that allows a lot of continuity to get your run game going. And really, the Cowboys believe can marry their run game with their pass game, at least in theory. What exactly does that look like? How can that manifest? Not every Cowboys offensive coach is here. I've told there's many offensive coaches that are back in Frisco still, not at the Combine this week in Indianapolis because they're working on getting this offense ready. So just asking about Blasco and what it means to marry the run and pass game, I think is an important conversation to have.
Yeah, it was interesting as he replaces Skip Pete, who was Zeke's guy. And if Pollard's back, Steven mentioned in regards to Zeke, he's making a lot of money, and he knows that. Do you think that Zeke has played his last game as a Cowboy?
Gosh, that is the big question. There's a lot has happened thus far at the Combine, yet there's still a lot of Combine still to go. I'd probably feel more comfortable answering that question late in the week, which just gives me an opportunity to do a little bit more reporting. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I can say with certainty that Ezekiel Elliott will not be back in 2023 under the current, in the current structure of his contract. That is a fact. Something will be done with Ezekiel Elliott. That is, you can write that down in concrete. So that's a fact. We know that, but whether or not it's a significant pay cut or if it's a straight release, not sure. But I mean, there's a real possibility that the Cowboys move on from Ezekiel Elliott. They think the world of him. When I talk to people, all I hear is just what they think of him as a teammate, as a competitor. I mean, it's on and on the praise. So if they do move on from him, I'm sure they want to go about it the right way. And so they'll be careful about how they communicate that to reporters, to Elliott, to, all involved.
Michael Gehlken, Morning News here live at the Combine. Cowboys beat writer Stephen Jones asked about being more aggressive in light of the Eagles moving all in a little bit. A.J. Brown, Hassan Reddick. It didn't sound like they're going to be more aggressive. Do you agree with that assessment? And do you think they need to be more aggressive in order to take the next step?
I'm kind of getting a sense that some sort of move is coming on offense where they're trying to add some juice to this offense. They think that there's another guy there. Let's assume that Tony Pollard is back. We know CD Lamb is back. I think they believe that a third guy is missing, and they do expect Michael Gallup to do more in 2023, coming off a torn ACL, have another year under him. He had multiple arthroscopic surgeries, the knee and ankle. They think that he'll be better this year compared to last year, but they're not including Gallup when they feel this way. From my impressions, is that there's going to be a move here, and it could be a wide receiver, sure, will make a lot of sense. Could be a tight end, if indeed they move on from Dalton Schultz, which I think is more likely than not. But we'll see what it looks like and how it manifests and how aggressive, quote unquote, it ultimately comes to be in terms of what it takes to pull off this move. Could be a straight signing, could be a straight draft pick, but it just seems like there's a third piece to this offense that is missing in terms of a weapon, and I believe that is something that people should be monitoring in the weeks to come.
Do you expect a guy like Donovan Wilson to be back here?
I do. I think ultimately his market will be very interesting. The economics always drives the conversation, but based on what he's shown, based on his value, based on his physicality, and what he brings, so much of what the Cowboys want their defense to represent. Yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum going there in terms of Donovan Wilson being back. But ultimately, I think Donovan Wilson's a good example of kind of what's been an unfortunate reality where the Cowboys have, not for a lack of want to, but they just haven't been able to get in front of players hitting the market in signing these guys to early second contracts. Ideally, and this is the history of the league, if you want to be a draft and develop organization, I think you guys have heard me talk about this before. If you want to be a draft and develop organization, it's not enough to just draft players and hit on those players and develop them into being, key guys. You got to re-sign them to second contracts. And if you're wanting to do that, it's better to do it in year 3 of their career rather than wait until a guy like Donovan Wilson's about to hit the market after his 4th season. His value's never been higher. Ideally, that's the second contract because that would have happened a year ago. So that's why CeeDee Lamb is the deal they want to get done. Trayvon Diggs is a deal they want to get done. Ultimately, in at least another year's time, Micah Parsons will be a deal that they want to get done. Donovan Wilson, not a deal that they got done ahead of time, but yeah, they'll have a chance to get that done. It'll just be a little bit more pricey than it would have been 12 months ago.
Michael, when we last talked to you, it was from the Super Bowl, and the whole thing was going down about Michael Irvin, and you were way ahead of the game on that. Is there any updates that, through your research and talking to people, that you can add to the story since we talked to you last time from the Super Bowl?
Right now, the latest is Marriott is recently filed a motion that is saying, we don't own Renaissance. We're affiliated with Renaissance, but it's not like just happened at, a different one of our properties that we associate with our brand specifically. And so there's that question that needs to be answered, and that is something that the judge in the Eastern District of Texas will have to make a ruling upon. We also have a 5 p.m. deadline here in terms of 5 p.m. Central that is fast approaching, where days ago Michael Irvin's lawyer requested basically a response to, they want to see the surveillance footage of whatever happened at that Marriott or Renaissance. They want to have any witness statements and any other documents associated with Michael Irvin's stay in February. And so I don't expect Marriott to turn around and provide that surveillance footage or provide any witness statements or summary documents as to what exactly happened. But nonetheless, the deadline is approaching. So Marriott, I expect, will have some response today in the hours ahead, presuming that yesterday's motion for them to be just completely removed from this situation because of the Marriott versus Renaissance affiliation doesn't remove them from having to file that response. So there's some gray area there, and ultimately there's a lot of. I do not have a law degree. I feel much more comfortable talking about football and free agency than I do about what's going on with Michael Irvin versus Marriott. But that, to my understanding, is the general lay of land where really the judge is going to have to make some key decisions. One, what is Marriott's role in this dispute involving a Renaissance hotel? And two, how soon is Michael Irvin going to be able to view the surveillance footage and really get a better understanding of what exactly this female employee at that Renaissance hotel says happened with him?
We're getting a tally all week long, all of our guests. Favorite menu item at Sonic. Favorite menu item at Sonic, according to Michael Gehlken, is what?
Oh, gracious. I can't remember the last time I went to a Sonic, but their milkshakes in the commercials are pretty good.
Good answer.
Good. Wow, he seemed a little more uncomfortable talking about Sonic than he did Michael Irvin in the legal case there for a second. Good call, though, Michael. Their shakes kick ass.
Great. I'm relieved.
Hey, we appreciate your coverage so much and your insights there live at the Combine. Michael Gehlken, Morning News here on your home of the Cowboys. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.